somebody erase the beginning?
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
on Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs, have some fun.
Welcome into Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac. Madelyn, Burke, Shaun, O'Hara hanging out in studio. It's Wednesday, my dudes. A show brought to you by Cadillac in the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. Just a reminder before we get started, too, that there's an archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, on podcast platforms everywhere, and on giants.com/podcast. It's Wednesday, my dudes, but it's also Week 1, Shaun.
Here we go. Let's
It's go
rock
time.
and roll.
It is go time. The Giants have the Commanders Sunday at 1 p.m. at Washington to start the season. How jazzed are you for this one?
You know what? I'm so pumped up, and on my way over here, I was just kind of looking outside and just kind of thinking about back when I was a player and how excited I was for Week 1. Like the anticipation as a team of, you know what? It's a clean slate. We got a new team. For the Giants, you've got a new quarterback in Russell Wilson. There's all this new energy, and I think this is the most positive preseason that the Giants have had in a long time. There's so much great momentum. There's so many great things to build on from what happened in the preseason games and in training camp. And I know if I'm a player in the locker room right now for the Giants, I can't wait. I can't wait to get to Sunday at 1 o'clock. I can't wait to get on that train and go down to Washington. And I think it's a great Week 1 matchup for the Giants. This is a team that the Giants really have kind of pounded for the last years, if you extrapolate over the last 5 years. But they lost twice last year. They lost both games. They got swept. That hasn't happened in a long time.
That
But those
Week
games
2
were all
game,
one score.
that Week 2 game was an asterisk, though. Washington won with only field goals, and Graham Gano was injured on the first play.
I think that was a record, right? They said an NFL record is the first team to lose a game without giving up a touchdown.
Well, no, because Monday Night Football Bears-Cardinals, where Denny Green lost it on the podium. You want to crown him? Crown him. The Bears won without any offensive touchdowns. They did have special teams touchdowns, though, and defense. So they had touchdowns, just not on offense.
Pulled his hammy on the opening kickoff, and then that just spiraled, and they ended up losing by 3, to your point. So they sacked Jane Daniels 5 times in that game. The Giants defense got off to a hot start last year. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. But I think offensively for the Giants, we saw a lot of production all preseason training camp. We were talking about there needs to be progress offensively, and that progress needs to be production, and it's points. Yeah. So, we're down with OPP, offensive production and points. We're down.
You know me.
So
listen,
this will be fun. I think the players can't wait to get to. There's a lot of leadership on this team. I feel like in the locker room,
player-driven leadership too.
Yeah,
which
and
is
I think
great.
that means that it carries more weight.
I agree. It's accountability. I think, in any regard, if your boss tells you to do something, you hear it one way, but if your peer or your friend or your colleague kind of echoes that same sentiment, it feels a little bit more personal. A lot of excitement around this team. The vibes are high. You mentioned the points. Giants had 30-plus points in every preseason game. We'll see if that trend continues, if the offense continues to roll in Week 1. Let's get it going. But we want to hear from you guys as well. 201-939-4513 is the phone number, 201-939-4513, or you can participate on social media at #GiantsChat or chime in the YouTube comments. But a lot of conversation to get into around this Week 1. We mentioned, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of optimism that you can feel from the fan base, from the media, from people covering this team. Brian Daboll right now is at the podium addressing the media. Big storyline, of course, earlier this week was the unofficial depth chart that came out from Giants public relations that listed Jackson Dart as the backup quarterback. Daboll was asked about that. He said all 3 quarterbacks will be ready to play on Sunday. And that is kind of where he's leaving it right now. He also mentioned that everyone is out there practicing. They're having a padded practice today, including Andrew Thomas, Theo Johnson. Just going to kind of see how these guys rev up for the week. There's 3 practice days this week: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, travel on Saturday, game day on Sunday, Shaun.
So this is kind of the start of what the regular season week schedule will look like. Now, it's a little bit different because You're coming off a Labor Day weekend. In years past, when there was 4 preseason games, the last preseason game was always that Thursday night before Labor Day weekend. So you kind of had a couple days off. Usually we'd come back Monday, practice, be off Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, your normal weekly schedule. So under that premise, Wednesday was always your big, full padded, working on first and second down run plays. We used to call them 9-on-7. Now they call it something different because they don't want that the moniker on such a physical team period. But Wednesday is huge, install. Here's our game plan for Washington. Here's what we're going to try to do against them and what their defense is going to try to do against us. So that's obviously something that you're putting in Wednesday, and some of these guys are seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
Listen, for Russ, this is his first time in a game week. Jackson Dart, obviously, as a rookie, one of the hardest things to do as the number 2 quarterback is you've got to mentally be locked in like you're starting the game, even though you're not getting all of the reps as well. Russell will probably take all of the first team reps, and Jackson Dart will probably get some. So it's always hard to kind of get thrust into it without getting all of the actual reps. So mentally, you got to stay locked in.
That's also why, we saw Brian Dable and he talked to us, especially in our production meetings before the game broadcasts, about how he was deliberate about putting not just the players, but the coaching staff in uncomfortable situations and kind of surprising them with certain moments.
Yeah.
One of those moments did include pulling Russ out for a play, sending Jackson Dart in to say, hey, got to go in there, make a play. Are you ready? Yeah, he hit Theo Johnson a 30-yard gain on a slant right there, and that was a moment for him to feel what it would feel like if on a moment's notice, hey, you got to go right now, and the rookie was able to execute.
You never know as a player when the call of duty is coming. And I think that was great insight by Dable to say, you know what, I want to get this guy battle tested, and the only way to do it was surprise him and throw him into the fire and just let him kind of learn as he goes. And I think that is where real growth happens.
Right.
You could sit back there and with the training wheels on, but until you get on that bike, training wheels off, and you got to learn, like, if I tip over, I'm falling. There's no harness, there's no safety net. That is when you really grow as a player and as a person. So I think that was huge. And then we also saw that all of a sudden the headset didn't work.
Yeah.
So now you got to figure it out.
How did that happen? Yeah.
You know what? Kind of our game plan. You know what we're trying to get done. So, let's see if you could handle that mental side of it as well. So those are all good things. But I think for this team, there's so much going into week 1, and defensively you're also looking at, all right, now we're actually game planning. We're game planning for Jaden Daniels. What do we want to do? For Shane Bowen. Defensively, we want to get after the quarterback, right? Obviously, with Abdul Carter in there, everybody's been talking about this front and how many sacks they had last year. They started out through 7 weeks. They led the NFL in sacks. They had 31 through the first 7 weeks. They had 5 sacks in this week 2 matchup last year. And then in the next game, they had 0 sacks. So Jaden Daniels is one of those guys where, look, we've got to get after the quarterback. We got to contain him, though. He is a threat to get out of the pocket and extend the plays. There were a number of times last year in that week 2 game where we had a free blitzer that should have had a sack. Micah McFadden on one play had a chance to sack him and couldn't bring him down. So that's something that they're going to be working on too. Is it's not just enough to get to the quarterback. We've got to finish it off, and we've got to get him to the ground. We can't have missed sacks if we have a blitzer that comes free.
Right, absolutely. And finishing also something that we've heard from Kayvon Thibodeau is why he talked about wrestling in this offseason. He noticed how many of his sacks last season were half sacks and how much higher his total number could have been had he finished and been able to get there and bring a guy to the ground.
You got to sweep the leg, Johnny.
Sweep the leg, Johnny.
Put him in a body bag!
One of the things Brian Dable said too is quote, everyone will be out there in practice today. Shaun, that's a really great place to be going into week 1 of an NFL season when you've got everyone healthy enough to practice.
I can't tell you how many times you talk to coaches, you talk to players, and everybody says, man, can we just get through the preseason healthy? Mm-hmm. And as a player, you're always thinking about, look, preseason, I want to knock off the rust. I want to work on my craft. But, like, as a lineman, it's like, man, I hope I don't, like, tear any ligaments in my hands, my thumbs. Like, I want to get through preseason, start week 1 fresh. And this Giants team is just that. And I can't remember the last time that the Giants started a regular season and everybody was healthy and they got through everything unscathed. So kudos to Dable, to Shane, and the way that they planned everything, because look, there was a lot of joint practices back to back with the Jets.
Yeah.
They played everybody in preseason, which I think was a smart move, because you got to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Like when September rolls, it can't be sloppy September for the Giants.
No.
Week 1 and week 2 can't be, shucks, we let that one get away. No, we can't do that. We cannot give away games. We can't let them slip through our fingers like they have in the past, especially to start the season off. So I think that was great. And then also, I think Aaron Wellman, he's took over for the strength and conditioning program. That has always been something that Ronnie Barnes, the head of medical for the Giants, he's vice president. I got to make sure I give him the proper title.
Yeah.
A VP of medical. He is always been at the forefront of nutrition and load management, recovery. Those are all things that they really looked at this offseason to say, how do we try to find a way to shake that up and kind of get rid of this that moniker that they had, where they constantly led the league in players on IR. So that's all hands on deck. So kudos to them for getting through all that, and the players too for being diligent and taking care of their bodies. That's a big part of it. So man, you're all hands on deck. You got everybody on board. Let's hope that stays true through the week. But I think it's great too, because there's guys that are coming off injury that they were kind of making sure, all right, we're going to ease them into it. Neighbors, they kind of took care of him in the preseason, and then obviously Andrew Thomas, him coming off of PUP, trying to make sure he's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it's like they say, luck is where preparation meets opportunity, and the Giants did have a little bit of luck in the fact of just good juju, and the fact that they didn't have any of those unfortunate freak accident injuries in the preseason. But I remember, you and I do preseason broadcasts of games, and usually when I've been on the sideline in years past, at least 3, 4, 5 of those hits are injury updates. We didn't have, touch wood, luckily, that problem this preseason. So we'll see if that health and that, as you mentioned, not just the staff, the training staff that keeps the players healthy, but also the players kind of taking care of their own bodies and being ready for week 1 is such an important element.
Yeah, I feel like the medical tent was very rarely used. Jackson Dart, I think, got his first dose of it, and he took a big hit, and he's okay. So good. The Giants were overdue for some good luck.
Absolutely. The good juju. And hey, Giants fans, make sure you go and subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. It features long-form interviews with Giants players, coaches, and front office staff, past and present. Plus, you can hear from the best analysts covering Big Blue and the NFL. Just search for the Giants Huddle and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or go to giants.com/podcasts. And don't forget, if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star positive review for all of our Giants podcasts. 201-939-4513 is the phone number. Let's head to the phone lines, because we've got Ron in Pittsburgh who's been holding the longest. Ron, welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live. You're on with Shaun O'Hara and Madelyn Burke. What's going on?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks for
calling.
calling.
I'm out here living in Steelers territory, but I actually grew up in Hillsborough, New Jersey. I think that's where Shaun's from, right?
What's up, Ron? Ron from the Borough.
Hey,
B-O-R-O.
Yeah,
Borough. Go.
B-O-R-O. That's it. Your number, I think it was 66, is still up on the scoreboard there. At least it was when I graduated there. So.
Yeah, it's still there. Still rocking it. It's looking a little weathered and tattered these days, but it's still up there representing.
That's awesome. Glad to have you on the Giants too. It was cool. It was a sense of pride at Hillsborough High School, having you play in the NFL. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about was specifically NFC East players. Over the years, we've had a lot of Giants, Saquon or Dory Jackson. This year it was Ojulari. There was another cornerback too. I can't remember who a couple years ago went to the Eagles. Obviously, Landon Collins went to Washington. We signed Chauncey Goldstein from the Cowboys. I think Alfred Morris played for 3 out of 4 NFC East teams.
Yeah.
And it just seems like that division is, forgive the word choice, like pretty incestuous. Is that common across the NFL, or is that something specific to the NFC East?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I don't know that I've really got a pulse on all these other divisions and how that happens, but I do think I'm sure it happens because you get so familiar with them. And it's like, hey, you know what? Like that guy, we had a hard time tackling him, or we had a hard time blocking him. Chris Canty is a guy that comes to mind. You mentioned Chauncey Golston. He was wearing 99 in Dallas. So as I was watching film after we signed him, I had flashbacks to Chris Canty. We signed him from Dallas, and he was a huge factor on Super Bowl 46 team. And I used to tease Richie Sorbert. I'm like, Richie got you paid, Chris, because Richie couldn't block you. So we figured, hey, if we can't block you, if you can't beat him, join him, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of brought Candy in there, and we used to kind of always, tease Chris in front of Rich about, hey, you should make sure you take Richie out to dinner because he got you paid because we couldn't handle you when we played you with the Cowboys. But I think that is, in the NFC East, it's always one of the most physical divisions. So when you play in the NFC East, I feel like, when the winter rolls around, like you've got to be able to play smash mouth football on both sides of the ball. And I think that that's something that, all the 4 teams, they look at it like, hey, you know what, this guy's been in this division. They understand the rivalry. They understand what those games entail and how physical they can be.
Yeah.
And I think also like a guy like Landon Collins, it's like, hey, you know what, I have a chance to go somewhere else. I like being, Philly, Giants, Cowboys, Washington. Like this is kind of the mecca. Like the NFC East, the spotlight's always on you. You're always playing in big games, and I think a lot of players like that too.
But I think to your point, Shaun, the familiarity is a big factor. And Ron, you mentioned there's a lot of incestuous nature of guys going back and forth, but it is that familiarity. And you think about it, and it comes down to, even in the preseason when players are claimed off the waiver wire. Tommy DeVito claimed by the Patriots. Why? Because he just put a hat trick on the Patriots in the preseason. They just saw up close and personal what he's able to do. So when you're playing in division and you're so familiar with what a player is able to do, and then they become a free agent, you say, yeah, we want that guy because we know, like you said, what he's done to us. That, I think, would probably be the reason in the familiarity. And plus, for a player, not having to go too far or being familiar with the division and what it takes to go against the other opponents in it, might be a benefit as well, Ron.
Cool. Thanks, guys. One more question. I'll take the answer off the air. Who gets the first sack of the 2025 season?
Ooh, I like the question, and thanks for the call, Ron. Who gets the first sack for the New York Football Giants?
I just mentioned how tough it was to bring Jaden Daniels down.
Yeah.
It's getting there, like G.I. Joe, they're saying knowing is half the battle. Well, getting there is half the battle. And then you got to take them down.
Yeah.
You mentioned Thibodeau. I think Thibodeau has really – I've seen a lot of progress with him, with his ability to kind of finish beating the offensive lineman and getting to the quarterback. But I'll go with Brian Burns on this. Washington has kind of tweaked their offensive line a little bit.
Okay.
I'll say Burns, Spider-Man, gets the first sack for the Giants this year.
Shaun O'Hara is officially going with Spider-Man. I am going to say – I'm going to put my faith – into the young Darth Vader, the rookie, Abdul Carter. Because you know why? This man is focused, determined, and he has motivation. Like when you're watching a true crime documentary and they're like, well, what's the motive? Obviously the motive is you want to get a sack as a pass rusher. But Abdul Carter tweeted out about 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you see me and I'm looking a little rough. I'm not going to cut my hair until I get my first sack. And he did not have a sack in the preseason. So I think that, this man, first of all, is going to want to come into Sunday Night Football with a clean lineup. So week 1 or week 2, he's got to get in there. And I think there's a little bit of a sense of urgency to get this going. Plus, he's a force to be reckoned with. So I would not be surprised if we see Abdul Carter, incredible, get the sack.
Well, I'm pretty sure he'll be out there on the first 3rd and long.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure his barber is hoping that he gets it too.
Got the barber on the sideline, just ready with the clippers.
I've been sharpening these things for weeks. I can't wait to get on those buckshots.
Yeah. Listen, we're ready. We're ready for it. I like that idea, though. And I think, it is interesting when you look at the way that this Commanders offense has come together, Shaun. We mentioned Jaden Daniels. He's, can be a little bit tough to get down. But let's talk a little bit about their skill position players. Terry McLaurin, they finally got that squared away, his contract. Yeah. He obviously missed quite a bit of training camp in the preseason, so remains to be seen what kind of game shape he is in. He's going to be out there because there's no situation in which he's not. I do like, though, the excitement around their young running back, Bill, Corey Croskett-Merritt, they call Bill. It feels like the Brian Robinson trade was even more of a signal of the fact that they believe in this young guy. There's a lot of hype, at least in the fantasy football world, around him.
Yeah, and I think you don't make that move if you haven't already been validated by a young running back like that.
Right.
And if you're saying, look, we see that he's got all these tools and we can get compensation for Brian Robinson. I think Austin Eckler, too, kind of gives them that luxury as well. Like, you know what, if we need to lean on Eckler a little bit more early on as he kind of gets his bearings, I think they felt comfortable with that. Austin Eckler he's been an every down back early on in his career. He's obviously excellent out of the backfield. So they've got a guy that can help out and carry that load. But, yeah, this offense, it's interesting. Jaden Daniels, Rookie of the Year last year, he led quarterbacks in rushing yards as well. He had almost 900 yards rushing. So some of that was scrambling, but some of that was design runs as well. So their run game is going to be multifaceted. And I will also sprinkle in Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
Because Deebo was a big pickup for them. They had Terry McLaurin already, so they're not bringing in Deebo to be the number one receiver. They're bringing in Deebo to kind of be that Robin to the Batman. And now all of a sudden he's in the slot, but they will line him up in the backfield as well. He did it with Shanahan in San Fran a lot. They actually line him up, in running back on first and second down, and he's that hybrid role, and I think that's something that the Giants have to prepare for as well. There's going to be some wrinkles. There are going to be some plays where, look, Deebo's going to get the ball as a slot receiver, some quick throws, try to get him in space. He's a powerful guy. He's a tough runner. So you want to get him in space and let him break tackles. So that's going to be something that Shane Bowen and this defense have to focus on. Where is Deebo? Where is he? What's he lined up at? What's the matchup looking like if it is a pass? But, be ready for the runs as well. So that's the multifaceted run game that you're getting from Washington.
Yeah. Now, this is a Washington team, too, that, as you mentioned earlier, the Giants have had their number in previous years, but it is a different team than has been in previous years. We mentioned that, Washington swept the series last season, even though there were a couple of moments that feel asterisk-like in that series. But also they've got more consistency than they've had in recent years. Jaden Daniels is the first quarterback to start consecutive season openers for Washington since Kirk Cousins back in 2016-17. So it's been about 10 seasons almost. 8 straight with a different week 1 starting quarterback. That's the longest streak in the NFL since 1950. That's including the Cleveland Browns in that mix, who have had a lot of quarterback turnover. So the fact that they've got consistency at the quarterback position, they've got new weapons, as you mentioned, in Deebo, and some, interesting new toys. It's going to be, this isn't the Commanders of a couple of years ago where the Giants would always kind of have their number. This is a tough matchup.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm just kind of looking at Washington's roster as well. And, I think kind of something that's flying under the radar too is Laramie Tunsil in a left tackle. So, Laramie Tunsil, he was going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. I think it was 2015 maybe, until the gas mask incident came out, and then he kind of slid. But he has been one of the elite left tackles in the NFL for a long time. He's signed a couple of big deals, big contracts. So that's, something to look at this offensive line. I don't think last year anybody thought the Washington Commanders offensive line was going to play as well as they did.
Sure.
So the fact that they were able to upgrade some of those positions, I think that's going to bode well for them as well, and it's going to, make the Giants pass rush. That's a tough challenge. He's a tough out if you're one-on-one against a guy like that.
Yeah. 201-939-4513 is the phone number, but let's head to YouTube where we're getting comments as well from some of our listeners and viewers. Thanks so much for tuning in on YouTube. Let's start with Mike Maney, Giants fan my whole life, he says. My concerns are Evan Neal and John Michael Schmitz. Any thoughts on their improvement? Oh, sorry, I'm just falling off the chair.
Let's start with JMS.
Yeah.
This is the best I've seen JMS play since he's been drafted. And last year, I kind of go back to, I feel like in the first week of practice last year, he injured his shoulder. And I don't think he was ever 100% after that. And I felt like he kind of struggled at times with using his hands and getting his hands inside. And, that kind of, he was on the edge of defenders a lot. This year, I feel like he's much better with his anticipation. It's like he understands the defenses now, where they're going. He's not behind the defender anymore. Now he's in front of them. He's anticipating the stunts and the movements and seeing what the defense is doing if there is a blitz. So I think he's next level from a mental standpoint. But physically, this is the best that I've seen him use his hands, and I think that's a big part of playing center because everything is close quarters combat. Like you've got to have your hands on him before he gets his hands on you, and you've got to be quick with it. You're working in concert with your guards. You're passing off twists. Very rarely is it just one guy in front of you and you're just blocking him head up. There's guys and bodies flying everywhere. So,
how much tape does he have on his fingers?
Well, if he's smart, he tapes them all. Like I used to tape every single knuckle.
That was
that was kind of how I felt like I was ready for battle. But you got to throw those hands. Luda talked about throwing them bows. You got to throw them hands. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I've seen from John Michael Schmitz. The one thing that has plagued the Giants' offensive line the last couple of years is blitzes and twists on the inside. So the two guards and the centers passing off some of those A and B gap blitzers when they bring a linebacker in 1A gap and they kind of loop and twist the defensive lineman. That's been something that has not been as clean as it should be. It looked a lot better when we would watch practice in training camp and in the preseason and the joint practices. That looked a little more cohesive. So I think that helps, the more playtime you have. Evan Neal, look, I think Evan is working hard, but it doesn't look natural to him yet. Moving into guard, there's some different things you've got to kind of figure out. You're in a little bit of more of a phone booth. Like tackle, you're more in space. Guard, you're kind of in a phone booth, and you kind of have to figure out how to handle all that movement because you do have a lot of stunts by the defensive ends, stunts by the D tackles. You've got to have your eyes on the inside backers as well because they get involved in it. So I think he's progressing, but if Evan Neal's in the game, run the ball. When he gets moving downfield, like if he can block guys in a straight line, he's a people mover. He's got to keep working on his footwork and keep working on the change of direction.
Got to keep moving people. Like in Detroit, they got a people mover that takes people all around the city. I don't know if you know, you know. That's what they call it. It's the tram. We're getting a lot of questions about Andrew Thomas. Scott Young wants to know any word on Thomas, if he's going to be a go for Sunday. He is out on the practice field, and they're going to take it day by day. But again, fortunately, this isn't some injury that crept up like whack-a-mole. They've been preparing for this in the offseason. And, getting James Hudson all the reps at left tackle, so they are prepared if he's not ready to go, and they're not going to put him out there in a situation where he's not. Ryan has a question. He says, we hear a lot of concern about Thomas, but haven't heard any talk about Russ being a lefty and the burden that takes off the left side. I've got to clarify, Russ is actually a right-handed quarterback, so not sure. Maybe there's like a mirror image flip, but he is a right-handed quarterback. So Ryan, I just want to clarify that just so people aren't getting confused by that.
Ryan, you got to take the L on that one. I mean, Russell Wilson's been playing a long time. And I'm not sure if there's another Russ out there that he could possibly be confused with. But look, he's Mr. Unlimited, but I think that is one limit. I don't think he could throw with his left hand. I don't think anybody wants him throwing with his left hand.
We haven't seen it yet, though.
Ryan, you got to take the L now. You better shotgun a beer, buddy. Yeah. And whatever you do, don't bring that up at work, all right? Because you're going to lose all credibility.
And listen, we're only here to just make sure that sentiment doesn't get repeated in further water cooler conversations because, hey, I don't know. Sometimes you see something and you're like, that looks like his left hand.
Yeah.
But it was his right.
Bags of sand. What was I thinking?
What was I thinking?
Maybe nobody will notice.
I can't even piggyback off of that reference right now. So I'm going to just, Giants fans, with another impactful draft and free agency class in the books. That means it's full steam ahead to the 2025 season. Take your fandom to the next level with the Giants season ticket membership and catch all the action at MetLife Stadium with an exciting home schedule on the horizon. With the membership, you'll also stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days, with exclusive member access and benefits. To learn more about a New York Giants season ticket membership, visit giants.com/tickets. And also, speaking of exciting events and things to participate in, this Friday at American Dream, we're having a season kickoff event. I'll be there. Brandon London will be there. Are you coming through?
I wasn't invited.
Got some Giants legends, not including this one apparently.
No, I won't be there, but I'll be there in spirit.
Be there in spirit. Russ, Malik, we've got some players coming through. So come get your tickets, support Giants season kickoff this Friday, September 5th at the American Dream. Bags of sand. 201-939-4513 is the phone number. Let's head back to the phone lines. Ed in New York is on line 1. Ed, thanks for calling. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Shaun O'Hara and Madelyn Burke.
Hey, Madelyn. Hey, Shaun. Shaun, I remember watching you as a young kid. I know that probably dates you there, and I apologize for that. I had a couple questions. I feel like the Giants, they look different. The attitude's different. I think Daboll's really turned it around as far as the atmosphere and the work environment. But I feel like the Giants are missing a number 2 guy. A lot of teams have number 2 guys. The Eagles have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. The Cowboys have C.D. Lamb and now Pickens. The Giants have Malik Neighbors, but who can step up and to make defenses go, whoa, wait a minute, we got to watch this guy. I just don't know if the Giants have it.
Well,
so that would be the first question.
I like that, and I think that there's going to be a difference in what we see from some of these skill position players with a different quarterback under center. The way that the ball gets out when Russ throws it versus quarterbacks of the past, I think is going to open things up for a guy like Darius Slayton, or even a Jalen Hyatt. Wan'Dale Robinson also, incredible volume of receptions last year. Didn't get a lot of yak from that, but I think if there's more anticipation in the ball placement, that could possibly change this season too. Shaun, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid question, Ed. And listen, Ed, you're only as young as you feel. So I'm young at heart. I still drink beer like I'm 25. So
Oh, nice.
Not a quitter.
But it's funny you mentioned age. I was just talking with Pearson. Pearson just celebrated his 31st birthday this weekend. So
woo! Happy birthday, Pearson Butler.
I feel like you're only as old as the youngest person in the room. So we're all with you.
Yep.
Happy belated. But Ed, to your question, I think they're waiting for somebody to take that role. Like, who is it going to be? And I think Darius Slayton could absolutely be the guy. He has been the Giants' explosive playmaker on offense for the last couple of years. He's got that world-class speed. So you love to have a guy that you can throw in the slot and just kind of use that speed, or have him on the outside and put Malik in the slot. So I think with Slayton, I think Wan'Dale was one of the best third down receivers in the league last year. So that he's kind of got a stronghold on that guy on third down. You want to put him on a little pivot route, a little whip route. Some people call it a jerk route, and get him in space. I think he has that ability. I think Tyrone Tracy can kind of be that guy. So I think it might be who's the number 2 weapon for the Giants. It might be by committee to start the season off, but I think one guy that people are overlooking is Theo Johnson.
Yeah.
And I think Russell Wilson loves his tight ends, and he and Theo have had really good synergy throughout this entire training camp and preseason. And Theo, he looks great. I mean, he was off to a great start last year as a rookie, was having a really productive season before the foot injury, and he looks even bigger, faster, and stronger now. So I think Theo could end up being a big part of this passing offense, and he's kind of flying under the radar right now. People aren't talking about him, which we're okay with.
But also, to your point about Theo, Russ, in his introductory press conference with the Giants, the very first media availability he had talking to Giants media, referenced very specific, Russ loves watching film. He's a film junkie. He gets in there and kind of retains a lot of it. A lot of specific Theo Johnson plays he was referencing from the season prior. I mean, this man dove in and had a lot of admiration for the way Theo plays, and I think that the way that Russ talks about Theo shows that connection was there even before they even got in the room and started working together.
Yeah, and every quarterback loves a big target like that. So, that's big. Look, I think Jalen Hyatt, he showed, in that final preseason game that he can get behind defenders. He had a couple drops in that game, but then he made up for it with the big touchdown catch. So, he's a guy that, I think they're kind of like, all right, is this the year that it all clicks and comes together? So I think with the ability that Russ has at throwing the ball down the field, he throws a very friendly, very catchable ball. I think that has injected a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of positivity in this offense. And, Ed, I think when you have a defense that is looking at the offense like, man, they're struggling to score points, or, what do we really have big play potential? Your defense plays different when they know, hey, we got a guy back there. We got a guy that can, with one throw, can turn this game on tilt and change the field and change, the score with one moon ball. I think that breathes life in the entire team, certainly in the offense, but it also helps with the defense too. They start to play a little more invigorated football, a little more passionate, and I think that's what we have seen from the Giants. You mentioned that, it looks different. It does. And it is, and it feels different. And they're having fun. That scoring points is fun and winning games is fun. So I feel like this team has personality, and they've got this identity now that we really haven't seen in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that we, maybe only have time for one more here, but do you feel, Shaun, that this team is kind of going, hey, we had something that worked where we were a punch-in-the-mouth defense with a run-it-down-your-throat run offense. Do you feel like the Giants are like, well, since that worked, it wasn't broke, maybe we'd go back that way. Now that we got Scadaboo, and do you think that might be the way things go back to, where we have possibly a top 5 defense this year? I really believe that. Do you feel like it's hey, we're going to punch you in your face and then run it down your throat? Is that kind of the style that they might go back to?
I mean, Ed, you're speaking my language. I'm an offensive lineman, so yeah, I love that mentality. I love that mindset. I feel like Dable has always kind of been like, all right, what are we doing well, and let's attack that. They didn't bring Russell Wilson in to hand the ball off. They brought him in to win games, so I think that they're going to lean heavily on that. I stood out on the field during one of the preseason games as they were warming up, and normally I just try to watch all different kinds of positions and just kind of see everything. I found myself aghast watching Russell Wilson throw the football. I mean, it's a thing of beauty. Like he has an unbelievable arm, even at his age. He's such a gifted thrower, and I think that's going to be a big part of the offense. Now, he's so accurate as well. So part of the run game sometimes is quick throws. So it's, hey, let's get the ball out quick. It could be a 3 or 4 yard route, but if the ball gets there on time and they break a tackle, now it's 10, 12, 15 yards. It's a big chunk play. So I think that's kind of going to be what it is. Dable has never been a smash mouth, run the football offensive guy. Like, that's never kind of been his calling card, if you will. Now, I think there are times when you have to do that. You're running the 4-minute offense, you're protecting a lead, you want to run the clock out. You've got to turn to that, and that's where you'll probably see more Cam Scadaboo and see more of that 2 and 3 tight end. But, Dable does love the smash mouth football, but it usually comes out of those multiple tight end formations. It's not necessarily with a fullback. It's let's get those guys out there. So that's what I think you look at. And when that smash mouth football and the 2-3 tight end formation comes out, and when you're running the ball well with that, it's great because now you can layer in some pass plays where the defense is condensed because you have 2 or 3 tight ends at the line of scrimmage, and now you have a lot of open space. Now all of a sudden you go to throw the ball, and you get Theo Johnson out in space. You get more one-on-one coverage with Malik on the outside. So that's something that they'll probably build off of.
Well, I appreciate both of you, Madelyn and Shaun. Thank you so much for your time, man, and go Blue.
Thanks
Ed.
so
much for the call, Ed. Yeah, and I mean, you just recently had some one-on-one time on the field with Theo Johnson for a feature.
Yeah, it's good to kind of just pick his brain a little bit about how, going into his second year, things that he's kind of learned about how to get open and how to use his body, and just kind of being with him and standing next to him. Like he's a big dude. Like he's tall, he's got long arms. Quarterbacks love that, especially down in the red zone when we can just throw a high ball up there and let our guy go and get it. But one of the things that he said to me that I thought was interesting was, he said with Russ, the ball is on you so quick, and he's like, there's sometimes where I turn my head around and the ball's already there. Like I didn't even see the throw. I just saw the ball. And when you have a quarterback that's putting the ball on the money like that, sometimes the ball catches you. Like you're just like, you can't get your hands up quick enough. But what that does is now it's like I can run my route and I know, boom, the ball's going to be right there. I don't have to make an acrobatic catch. I can catch the ball and make a move after that. So that was interesting hearing Theo talk about that. And
now you're not running your route and getting there and waiting for it. That anticipation and that timing is working really well.
That's huge.
Huge. Giants fans, run or walk with Giants legends. The Giants Foundation will host a 5K race and kids run presented by Quest on Sunday, October 26th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative T-shirt, and after the race, stay for a post-race festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K. The Giants Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. 201-939-4513 is the phone number as we head back to the phone lines. Ernie in Dallas. Ernie is holding on line 2. Welcome to the show. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Shaun O'Hara and Madelyn Burke.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Ernie?
I'm down here in Dallas, and I'm a little bit of blue in the middle of a lot of SARS. It's not easy. But I wear my Giant cap proudly.
We respect the strength of character in that
keep
right
waving
there.
the flag.
You know,
We'll be down your way
next week.
in 13 days.
Yeah.
12 days.
Yeah. Well, for our second win of the year.
Oh, I like it. I like it, Ernie.
I like it, Big Earn.
All right. Yeah, my question
Bigger.
is, I was looking at
Don't get Munson down
over the
there.
cap last night, and we're at $9.5 million minus. What happens if we don't get that fixed by the start of the season?
Good question. I think that if you're not under that, there's a penalty. There's probably a cap fee. But I think that's something that, most GMs handle. Whatever the deadline is, it's like, all right, we're going to, they work their way up to that deadline, and it's usually, all right, what we can do to make cap room is let's go into some of our biggest contract guys, Andrew Thomas, Dexter's probably one of them, and we could say, all right, what can we do to shuffle some cap money? So all of a sudden, hey, they sign an extension, or they agree to restructure the contract to give them more money up front, which lowers the cap number over the duration of the contract. So, Brian Burns would probably be a candidate for that. It's guys that have kind of, big cap numbers, but have 3 or 4 years left on their deal. So there's ways to do that and to kind of get you back down to, you don't want to be down to zero, because you want to have a little wiggle room, because the Giants were up against that a couple of years ago, and they, it was like, hey, we don't even have enough money in the cap to sign players to come in for the last couple of games of the season. So it does become a little bit of a numbers game, but I feel like it's algebra. It's like, it's not just, pluses and minuses. It's like if X plus Y equals Z, then, you got the Pythagorean theorem coming out. That's way above my pay grade.
Carry the two, all of that.
I keep looking for some restructuring news, but I haven't seen anything, and it's been kind of worrying me, because, like you said, you don't want to be zero. You want to have at least maybe 3 or 4 million or something in there, to the good.
Yeah, I feel like those are things that you never hear about. You never hear about what's happening while it's happening. It's just kind of like, oh, hey, this just happened. It's like, you know what, we've been working on this for 3 weeks, and then we finally kind of got to some numbers and figured out how to massage this and do this. So, if you're a general manager, you're not just going to one player and saying, hey, do you want to restructure? You start talking to all of them and seeing like what makes the most sense and who's willing to do what. And I think there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you hear about the problem when it's been solved.
A little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the call, Ernie. Appreciate it. Giants fans, the Giants official connected TV streaming app Giants TV brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, and on the Giants mobile app. Week 1 is upon us, Shaun, and it is important, I think, for myriad reasons for the Giants to get out and start strong. You don't want another 0-2 start to the season just for vibes. Ernie's got them winning the first 2 games, coming into Dallas having won the Washington game. I love the confidence out there. But you look at the history of, season openers, or the recent history, I will say. They've been outscored 68-6 in the last 2 seasons. 40-0 to Dallas 2 years ago, 28-6 against Minnesota. They allowed 9 touchdowns and only scored 6 points over the last two season openers. That is not going to be the vibe going into this season. And I think that the biggest difference that I noticed that you can point to as a tangible difference is the preseason play. The starters have gotten out there. You mentioned no more sloppy September. They got the cobwebs off, getting the rust off, getting out there and kind of getting a feel for one another and not having to work through the kinks of a game action when they count. That, I think, is going to play a huge role. Plus, the way that we have seen offensively the Giants putting up points, no matter which unit is out there. Every unit had multiple scoring drives throughout this preseason. The 1s, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s. what have you, which shows systematically things are working and things are getting better. You've got Mike Kafka back calling the plays from the sideline so he can be more communicative. There's such an emphasis on communication and on that player-driven leadership. Russ is bringing, captain positivity. Darius Slayton talked about him the other day, and it was like, I've never seen somebody so consistently in such a good mood, just always up here. And that has been really good for this building, bringing that positivity into this building. But I also think this building has been really good for Russ, kind of reminding him, hey, this is a player that a lot of these guys really respect and admire and are excited to work with. And, it could be the perfect storm for all parties involved.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is, and it's contagious. You know, positivity, and when you have guys like that are, that love what they do, that is tenfold in the locker room and out on the field. And when you have guys that are in leadership roles, quarterback position is always in a leadership role. But when your best players are also your hardest workers, that gets contagious. And now everybody says, all right, well, that guy, he's a 10-time Pro Bowler. If that's what it takes, then I need to start doing that too, and I need to up my game. So I think that is part of the whole plan that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll came down with. Like, here's how we want to build the team this offseason. We need guys that are going to elevate the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So I think that's been something that we have absolutely seen. And I think Russ, and Jameis, Jackson, even Tommy DeVito, the quarterback room, this quarterback play that we saw in this preseason, it feels like a totally different offense.
Yeah.
It feels like, even, when Russ was in there, okay, he came out, boom, all of a sudden Jackson Dart came in. We were scoring points. It was like the offense, there was no okay, well, now
drop off.
We're back to like 10-yard fight, or Tecmo Bowl. There's only 4 plays that you have to choose from. No, the entire, the whole offense looked cohesive. It looked functional. Tommy DeVito threw 3 touchdown passes in the last preseason game, and that's why the Patriots signed him.
Yep.
And when you looked at it, Jameis Winston, look, he comes in, Jackson Dart is in the medical tent, Jameis comes in, and boom, right out of the gate, boom, pops a touchdown. So that when you see that offensive production, then okay, every quarterback is seeing the same things. The processing speed of all of them has been accelerated, and the offense is blocking people. They threw the ball, 50 times in Buffalo in the first preseason game, 0 sacks. So those are things that you look towards, all right, this offense looks totally different. To your point originally, Madelyn, 100% the Giants, you have to hit the ground running. I touched on that earlier on. You can't come into week 1 and, hey, that was a wasted possession. Oh, you know what? We let that game slip away.
Yeah.
You can't do that. The Giants have one of the toughest schedules in the league. We've been talking about it all offseason.
Yeah.
They've got the Chiefs
coming in. So do the
Commanders,
Commanders, though. Commanders also have a top 8 strength schedule.
I mean, pretty much if you're in the NFC East, you've got one of the toughest schedules because we're playing
same divisions,
that same division and the same opponents. But this is crucial, and I think that was a part of why we saw the starters play so much in the preseason because it's I don't want to risk getting guys hurt, but I can't hold them back and try to save them from injury at the risk of them not being ready to rock and roll, when week 1 rolls around. So I think that's, a big part of the plan that it was as we saw in the preseason and in training camp for how we're going to play guys. But, I think that's really the point of emphasis. Start fast.
Start fast.
And red zone offense has been crucial. That's something that I feel like they worked every single day.
Yeah.
And the joint practices versus the Jets, that was a very big point of emphasis. It's one thing to drive the ball down the field. Once you get into that red zone now, you can't just keep kicking field goals.
Yeah.
You got to score points. The Giants have averaged 15.8 points per game the last 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
That's one of the worst scoring offenses in the league. And that's something that they absolutely feel like we had to fix. And 107 points in the preseason, it seems like they're on the right path with that.
Yeah. Well, it's also red zone offense is also important to consider in the analytics conversation, right? When people say, oh, go for 2 instead of kicking the PAT, you've got such a better shot, this and that. Okay, mathematically, all things being equal, maybe. But if you can't score from the red zone, you can't complete a 2-point conversion. So in terms of, aggressive play calling and kind of believing in your players in that point as well, you need to have the skill set to be able to be aggressive. And you think about, Daboll's first season as head coach, team went to the playoffs. First game against the Titans, he calls a 2-point conversion. You got to be able to trust your players to punch it in when they're in that range whether it's, just driving down the field or going for 2 or whatever it takes to win the game.
Yeah, and you got to execute. You got to get it done.
Execution. 201-939-4513. Let's head back to the phone lines. We got time for one more call. Alex in Philly. Alex, thanks for calling in. You're on Big Blue Kickoff Live with Shaun O'Hara and Madelyn Burke.
How you guys doing? Just calling in. I got one bold prediction, and honestly, I think a real underrated part of this season is how good this O-line has been performing, and you could tell that they're coming together as a unit, which I feel like is going a little bit underrated. Everybody keeps talking about the quarterback play in the preseason, and it was great. Obviously, it was great. But I feel like the O-line gelling together, and not just the first string or the second and third, just gelling together, giving those quarterbacks enough time to operate the way Dable wants them to operate, I feel like it's going to be huge this year. People don't, we're like one of the few teams that are bringing back all 5 starters on that offensive line. But no one's taking it serious. I don't know. I feel like, Shaun, you probably know this. I remember watching 07, and they asked Tuck and all the pass rushers, what made you guys, so good? And he was saying how he had to go against those monsters on the offensive line, you, Shaun, and McKenzie and Snee and all of them, and iron sharp as iron. And I feel like this offensive line has seen one of the good defensive lines in this league, just in our own house. And I feel like they're a very underrated unit. I really do think they're primed to show something this year. And my bold prediction is Giants lead the league in sacks, and that ultimately gets us into the playoffs.
I like it, Alex. I like the prediction. I'm with you.
Good.
I made that similar bold prediction on our Giants Hangout show this week that the Giants are going to go to the playoffs because the vibes are right. But yeah, in terms of his offensive line comment, Shaun, I got to start with you there as the center on the show.
Yeah, Alex, I love what you're saying, and look, the Giants. I don't think they're underlooked. I think they have been dysfunctional at times the last couple of years. So it's that they've earned that moniker. I kind of go back. It's funny. You went back to 2007. I go back to when I first came to the Giants in 2004. Now that was Coach Coughlin's first year. Jim Fossil was the coach before that, and in 2003, Giants fans, if you remember. Kerry Collins was the starting quarterback. He got hurt. Jesse Palmer came in. He played something. I think he might have got banged up too. Like the quarterback carousel was in full effect. And I'll never forget, it was a Monday Night Football game. Joe Theismann was calling the game, and he said on the broadcast, the Giants have the worst O-line in the NFL. So in 2004, when I came to the Giants. We drafted Chris Snee that year. Luke Pettigrew was here. Dave Deal was going into his second year. Our offensive line coach, Pat Flaherty, Flats as we call him, he made sure that we knew about that. He was like, I just want you guys to know this is what you are inheriting from the team before. And that was one of the things that drove us. And I'll never forget in 2004, we're like, we are not going to be the weak link. They're never going to be able to say that about us. Mm-mm. That same group in 2007, Luke Pettigrew was no longer there. Dave Deal was in at left tackle. We picked up Kareem McKenzie from the Jets. And that group, we started, I think, 38 to 40 consecutive games together. And that started back in 2006, 2007. So that's that kind of chemistry. I always say, offensive linemen, you got to slow cook it. You can't microwave offensive linemen. You can't speed up the process. And that's what I think. You got to slow cook it. The crock pot, put it on the Traeger grill and at 180 degrees and let it sit there for 8 hours. It's got to marinate. That's how that chemistry really builds. But I do agree with you that I think this offensive line, it looks cohesive. They look like they're all on the same page. And I think even with James Hudson, he's been a big pickup for the Giants this offseason. So if you look at what has transpired the last 2 seasons for the Giants, when Andrew Thomas went down, we were constantly trying to plug that leak, and we didn't have a player that could just go in there and solve the issue. I think James Hudson, He took every rep in training camp. He was in a left tackle. He has showed that he can handle that position.
And he's a guy who plays offensive line with a defensive mentality.
He's got a little vibe to him.
He's got a lot of dog in him.
I think it's good. I think that, we talked about positivity is contagious. That's contagious too.
Yeah.
And you could see it kind of rubbing off on some of the other guys. Hey, you know what? It's okay to play with a mean streak. It's okay to be a dirtbag at times on the offensive line. And we had a lot of those guys, and I think that's how we played the game. So this offensive line, I'm looking.
Yeah.
I think absolutely the bar has been raised for this group. You mentioned that they're not. It's not a new unit. Jermaine Illuminor last year was his first year. I think he solidified himself. John Runyon's a veteran. Greg Van Roten is a true veteran, and he played every single snap last year for the Giants. He was quietly one of the MVPs of the team. So I think that this offensive line, they can do good things. And I think one thing that helps every offensive line is a good quarterback. Well, they make you look good.
They make you look good, but also I think that, with that back to that player-driven leadership too, we talk about how, number one, Dave's is quick to underscore that, sacks are also a quarterback stat. It's not solely, the offensive line blew it here. The other thing too is the fact that getting a clean pocket is a collaborative effort from the 5 players on the offensive line and the quarterback, having to work together, that trust. And, some of these guys have talked in this preseason about how Russell Wilson, for example, they know that they're going to have to hold the line a little bit longer because he's back there and he's going to extend a play with his legs. Yeah. But they trust that he's going to make a play. And so they are locked in. They say, okay, instead of, maybe 1-2 seconds here, maybe I got to go 1-2-3 and make sure I keep this Hodor going on. Hodor. But you trust that you're holding it because something's happening back there. It's not just okay, whatever. And that trust in your teammates, I think, really has helped elevate. And also the accountability. I mean, Jermaine Illuminor talked about how Russ will kind of say, hey, point out certain things and draw attention to certain elements of, we need you to finish strong here, we need you to do this there. And that accountability of your teammates and that player-driven leadership has been rippling throughout this locker room so far in this preseason.
Yeah, that's a great point, too. And veteran quarterbacks, I played with one when I was in Cleveland. Kelly Holcomb would do this. Eli did this a lot, too. There are plays that will come in, and it's like, okay, we're taking a deep shot here. We're going for the jugular. And when you have a quarterback that is next level thinking, he comes in, and he doesn't just call the play. It's like, hey guys, we're taking a shot right here, all right? So I need you guys, you got to hold on. Hold on to that bucking Bronco. Your life depends on it. I need an extra second here, and we're going to hit the home run ball. So when a guy comes in to the huddle and he's got that knowledge and he understands.
And that expectation is set.
This is what we're going for right now. I got to get everybody on alert.
Yeah.
Not that you're not blocking your life depends on every play, but it's all right, on this play in particular, this is a long developing play. I need an extra second. We would have code words sometimes. We'd add max. So if it was 62 protection, 62, red would be a quick 3-step, 5-step, so you knew the ball was coming out quick. But if they said max, you knew all right, we got to hold on to the rock, or we got to hold on to the block because he's going to hold on to the rock for another second.
Mm-hmm. Hodor. That's it. It's week 1. Let's go. We've made it. We made it through training camp. We made it through preseason. We are just 4 sleeps away from our first game. I had to count it. Sorry. Listen, we're still getting there.
We told Madelyn there would be no math today. All right?
Know.
Good job.
I got the finger counting going. 4 sleeps away from the first game of the 2025 season, where we will see what all this excitement, what all these new pieces and new faces and second year guys and all the excitement is about, and how it'll execute on the field in the division.
You know what,
and
Madelyn,
Shaun and I are going to be
plug the post game.
Shaun and I are going to be listen. See, we're already so on the same wavelength that we both at the same time thought this is a good opportunity to plug the post game show, because right after the game, flip it to MSG Networks or the Giants YouTube channel and watch us break it all down. Plus, our post game show is getting a little bit of a remix this year. We're going to have some new elements and some exciting new toys to play with. So you're going to want to tune in and watch.
Nice tease.
Mm-hmm.
Well done.
I'm not going to tell you what they are because you got to tune in and watch to find out. Boom.
Well done. Shake and bake.
Pearson's over there just what is happening on this? All right. Well, on that note, let's wrap it up because that's our Wednesday show, Big Blue Kickoff Live. We got a couple more days of shows before the first game of the season, but we are jazzed to be out here.
Let's go Big Blue.
Let's go Big Blue. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, live from the Hackensack Meridian Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. Giants podcast platforms everywhere. Giants.com/podcast is where you can find the archive of this show. For Shaun O'Hara, I'm Madelyn Burke. We'll see you next time.